What's good, YouTube world? Killua Morales is back at it again with another video. Now, as I promised in my last video, I'm going to be doing a character analysis. But before all that, let's take a trip back down memory lane. Now, to be honest, after rewatching my old review on the Fruit of Grisaia, I've realized a couple of things. One, I looked very stiff in this video, which makes sense because this was one of my first few videos. Two, the editing was not the best, which is why I'm glad I continue making videos. Three, my outfit was a little cheesy, and that's just putting it lightly. And four, and most importantly, I did not give much justice to Yuji like I did his harem. So because of that, I've decided to dedicate a video to him in a new session I like to call, Is He or She a Hero? Now back to the present. So in this video, I will go into all of the intricacies of Yuji's character, including his backstory, his actions, his motives, and his impact to see whether or not he's a hero. And since I'm going to do a full synopsis of his life from start to finish, be wary of spoilers. By the way, if you haven't seen my old review on the anime, just click the card in the corner to check it out. But be wary because it does need a lot of work. I may do a redux of it in the future. So, ladies and gentlemen, sit back and relax as we look into the protagonist of the Grisaia trilogy, Yuji Kazami, and answer the question, is he a hero? Let's hop into it. So before I talk about the man himself, it's only right that I talk about his family. More specifically, his sister Kazuki. You see, Yuji was born the second child of Ryoji and Satoko Kazami following his sister. And Kazuki was seen as a genius after perfectly recreating a famous painting. And because of this, the patriarch Ryoji decided to use her gifts and smarts to make money, giving his daughter essentially a celebrity status. Things were going well for the family until the birth of Yuji. Unlike his sister, Yuji was born a normal kid, and because of his favoritism and greed, Ryoji would neglect him with no remorse. Now becoming the black sheep, Yuji's mental state was at a low point in his early years, as he would feel lonely with no one to rely on, until Kazuki took notice and decided to be the big sister she should have been from the beginning. Unfortunately, this doesn't last long and only got worse for him as that comfort dwindled further and further away because Ryoji just refused to give him any sense of comfort or warmth. Even though he had no connection with his parents, Yuji still had his sister to rely on despite her being very controlling at times. She was the only bright light in his already dark world, but that light would get blown out as his sister would die in a minibus accident. And because of this moment, his dark world would be filled with lava as Ryoji would go from neglecting him to full-blown abusing him in constant blind drunken rages. But thankfully, he would gain another light in the form of his mother Satoko. Deciding to be the mother she was supposed to be, Satoko would take Yuji and move into a new home, giving him just a little bit of happiness, day by day. Despite her sickly body, Yuji would go out of her way to provide for him, and with this, Yuji finally had a sense of hope because he was away from his father. But unfortunately, his father would return, and in a span of less than a few hours, he would ruin everything because of his selfishness and greed. Just when it seemed like things were going to be okay for Yuji, everything was completely shattered, leading to his breaking point, as in a blind rage, he would kill his own father. And with that, Yuji no longer had a home, let alone a family, because this would also lead to Satoko leaving this world, effectively making Yuji an orphan. That depression would only get worse, as he would be taken in by a known terrorist named Heath Oslo, as he would manipulate Yuji, at his lowest point might I add, into becoming the ultimate killer, as he would later go on to assassinate multiple public figures, from a politician to a journalist. At this point, Yuji was just broken physically and mentally, as even doing the smallest thing like killing a fly would set his mind into overload. But thanks to a mercenary named Asako taking him in, and with the help of her assistant Julia, aka JB, we finally learn what Yuji truly feels. He wants to die. All that suffering that was forced upon him has led to him thinking that the world hates him and takes joy in watching him suffer. But due to Asako telling him in her own way to find his own reason to live, he finally goes on that journey. As the years pass by, Yuji has started to become more mentally stable and feels that he finally has found a place to call home. But Asako's health started to deteriorate, so Yuji decided to follow in her footsteps, and with that, He would later learn the feeling of camaraderie after befriending and fighting alongside newly found friends in the form of Marine soldiers that always pronounce his name wrong. Thanks to his time serving in the military, Yuji would return home taking on Asuko's job. And as the days passed by, Yuji was living happily. But unfortunately, during one of his missions, Yuji would get a call revealing that Asuko's health has deteriorated as she would later pass away, bringing back Yuji's depression. Feeling alone again, Yuji takes a road trip to not only find himself, but also find what he wants to do with life. That was until he remembered a job which involved saving a little girl. You see, this little girl, whose name is Chizuru Tachibana and is actually in her mid to late 30s, possibly early 40s, wished to thank him in any way after saving her life. This was when Yuji remembered that he always wanted to live a normal life as a normal student. And with that, he makes a call to her, thus beginning his then new life as a student. Now, when you're first introduced to Yuji, he's portrayed as this stoic and bland guy that may or may not be related to Tatsuya Shiba from Irregular Magic High School and Inaho Kaizuka from All No Zero. But thankfully, as the story progresses, we see that he's a very layered and complex character. Now, having a protagonist with a tragic backstory is nothing new to media, but the way his was written really gives you an insight on why he's the way he is in present times. His tumultuous upbringing, and that's putting it lightly, has given him a very cynical view of life and is clearly on an emotional roller coaster with very little highs and too many lows to count. It wouldn't have been a surprise if he had become villainous, but through trials and tribulations, he managed to overcome it all with a new lease on life. Now, his actions from when he was a child, he had no control over until he meets Asuko, but there was a moment where he did have control, and that was the moment when he killed his father. This was one of the few moments where Yuji was at his most emotional and vulnerable. It seemed like things were only going to get worse, and that's exactly what happens, because with the loss of his family, Yuji was completely alone with, in all honesty, nothing to live for. This is the moment where he lost control, because Heath Oslo did everything in his power to turn Yuji into the ultimate killer, which mainly involved mental manipulation, more specifically making him believe that he's the only one that can give his life meaning, and drug usage, in this case an experimental drug that's basically this world's version of Marvel's super soldier serum, or Compound V from The Boys, minus the superpowers. Well, unless you count enhanced senses as a superpower. But after being taken in by Asuko, Yuji would later gain control of his actions as he decided out of his own free will that he would take on Asuko's job, which is ironically what Heath was training him to do, minus the whole mental manipulation and experimental drug usage. And despite JB's dismay over him returning to the bloodshed, Yuji steeled his resolve because in his mind, he's repaying Asuko for bringing light back to his dark world. Now, this perfectly segues into what his motives are. And this comes from his personal goal: to die. Asuko refrained him from dying by making him promise that he is not allowed to die unless he saved 5 people from similar paths. And this is where the 5 girls of Mihama Academy come into the picture. He guided Michiru through the 5 stages of grief, and that with death comes life. He helped Yumiko learn that her life is her own and that no one can tell her otherwise. He taught Sachi that it's okay to be selfish and that she doesn't have to follow every single order she was given. He taught Makina how to be independent and not to constantly cling to others. But most importantly, he forgave best girl Amane for supposedly abandoning his sister, while teaching her that the only person that can forgive her is herself. So with that promise kept, Yuji finally felt that he could die in peace. But what he didn't realize until the end of the series was that Asuko had basically guided him to find something worth living for. And with that, we can perfectly segue into his impact on not only the story but also the characters. You see, after the girls finally learned the truth about Yuji, his past, and his desire to end his life, they not only went out of their way to rescue him from a brutal fate, but also to ensure him that he does have something worth living for. They basically did what he's done for them, except on a grander scale. And this left a big impact on Yuji as well, because not only did he find out from this rescue mission that his sister was still alive, but he also realized what Asuko was trying to tell him before she died. This, in return, helped Yuji resolve himself by finally confronting the man that turned him into a monster. But thanks to the 5 girls, he knows that when he's done, he'll have a home to come back to. In the end, Yuji's impact on the story is very vast, and his impact on the viewers and the players is even bigger. He teaches us that even though life may be difficult, it still goes on, and as long as our hearts are still beating, there will always be hope for the future.
Message!
He also teaches us that the best decisions are never meant to be easy, and when we make those tough decisions, it will always work out in the end. Just look at where he is now, finally away from the bloodshed and in a literal and metaphorical place of peace. Now here's the important question. When looking at all of his actions, his morals, and the impact he had on others, can we say for sure that Yuji is a hero? Well, the answer is yes and no. He is far from a hero, but that doesn't mean that he's a villain. When you look at everything explained in this video, Yuji perfectly fits the characteristics of an anti-hero. He doesn't have a sense of righteousness or a sense of justice, but what he does have is a compelling story that makes you want to root for him to find his place in the world that's keeping him from getting what he wants, but instead gives him what he needs. He is a compelling character that has suffered as much as Guts from Berserk, and he learns that despite how dry and harsh the world is to him, there was an oasis that accepted him with open arms. Every time I watch this anime and play the visual novels, I always find that Yuji's character is similar to John Wick. They both have mysterious pasts, both of them are men of focus, they're both ruthless killers, but most importantly, they both want one thing: peace. The only difference is that John Wick finally got peace with his death, spoiler alert for those who haven't seen the franchise, and Yuji got it with an island. In the end, you can see that he can be considered a hero seeing how he saved the lives of the 5 girls. But I can see the other side because of the many crimes he committed, against his will that is. He may not be a god tier anti-hero like Vegeta, Sasuke, or Hiei, but he is an anti-hero that you'll love more than Light Yagami. And most importantly, he's one of the best harem leads of all time. Well, that's it for this video. Do you think that Yuji is a hero? Comment below to give me your thoughts. But now that we've finally given Yuji the much needed attention, it's time to get focused on reviewing not only some recent anime, but also some classics as well. And while I'm at it, I may or may not talk about some anime that deserves more attention than one would think. What do I mean by that? Sorry, not telling. You'll just have to guess. Now these videos will come in the distant future, but the next video will be obvious. My top 10 anime of 2024. So look forward to that. But for now, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, just like, comment, subscribe, and be sure to tap the bell icon so you're never missing out on the future video. But until then, thanks for watching. I'm leaving in Godspeed. Peace.